It's the 24th of August, 2021, and I'm standing here in the Cataloochee Valley of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park at an undisclosed location. I don't want to tell where this is because there is a very important artifact behind me. There's a stack of rocks right there, which once was a chimney, part of the old Evan and Elizabeth Hannah house. This is, as far as I know, the oldest man-made structure still standing in the valley. Now, there are certainly Cherokee artifacts and other remnants that they left behind, but as far as those of European descent or otherwise, this is the oldest structure that I know of that's still standing. It's way off the beaten path. There's no trail here. There's no road leading to it. It's down in the woods, and I was told where it was years ago and have come here several times. And this is where Evan Hannah with his family settled with his in-laws, William Noland and his wife, in about 1839. As Evan and Betsy's son, John Jackson Hannah, told his son, William Johnson Hannah, who thankfully recorded it for us. This was their home place. This is where they homesteaded. They lived and they died here. Evan Hannah in the latter part of the 1800s. His wife, Elizabeth, or Betsy, lived to, I believe, about 1901. Now, for those of you who are from Haywood County, she is the Betsy for whom Betsy's Gap is named. So when you're driving Highway 209 into or out of Madison County and you go through Betsy's Gap, that was named for Evan Hannah's wife, Elizabeth, known as Betsy, who was also the first known midwife who lived here in the Cataloochee Valley, again settling about 1839. And this was their home place. Now, eventually, it became property, I think, of the Bennett family, and then finally on down and further across the creek, my great-great-great-grandfather, John Wesley Hall, settled with his family, and that land passed to his son, Uncle Will Hall, who's also known as Preacher Will Hall. And just one of these interesting tidbits. So Evan Hannah's father-in-law was William Noland. He's the one for whom Noland Mountain is named, the separating mountain between Big Cataloochee and Little Cataloochee. And also the branch that's right below me was at one time known as Noland Branch. Later, the Nelson family settled there, and it became known as Nelson Branch. But then, as I say, the Hall family came to live there, and so when the Park Service took things over, instead of calling it either Noland Branch or Nelson Branch, they called it Hall Branch. Now, I don't argue with it because it was my family, but it just tells you how the government moves in mysterious ways. So the Hannah family proliferated here. They were one of the main families that lived in Big and Little Cataloochee. As I say, Evan had a son, John Jackson Hannah, who had sons. Among those were Mac Hannah, who was very prominent here, who lived over on Little Cataloochee, and a son, Jim Hannah. Now, interesting story. Jim Hannah was a Republican. I've never been able to understand why he was a Republican when the rest of the family was Democrat, but that seems to be the case. And so every year at election time, because at the polls you're required to have at least one Republican there acting as a registrar or a judge, of the election. And Jim Hannah always served out that role. In later years, his health declined, and he wasn't able to serve in that capacity. And so as people had moved out, all of those of Union Army descent who were the Republicans had moved out of the valley, and all that were left were Democrats. And nobody could serve as a Republican judge at the election, which created a problem. They couldn't hold the election at Nellie in the Cataloochee Valley unless they had a Republican judge. So they had to go abscond somebody. They had to go draft somebody to serve as a Republican judge. And boy, he was one mad and ornery character. He didn't want to be a Republican, didn't want to be known as one. But at least for several elections, a Democrat served as a Republican judge in the elections in Cataloochee. And now you know the rest of the story.